Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. Hello everyone, welcome back to Combat Patrol Carnage. I'm feeling a little bit better, but we're here to do some catch up, and it's going to be an all-in-one video for a change, as we're going to look at issue 62. So if the snarling Gene Stealer hasn't given it away, we're still continuing with our Gene Stealer Cults Combat Patrol, but today is a double paint issue, Caliban Green and Wild Rider Red. So inside the issue, we put our two new paints together, painting our Eldari and our Space Marines, as well as our Votan, Gene Stealer Cults, and Tyranids. So I won't be doing too much on camera. I'm literally going to do one little tutorial that I think could have been improved with a simple relayering. So we'll look at that in just a sec. Into the rest of the magazine, we've got Path to Ascension, some more Gene Stealer Cult lore. We look at heavy vehicles. We have a double-page short story called Enmity of Hope. And seeing as we've recently completed the Votan, we have 2 more pages for their campaign. So it is a paint issue, and these are the paints we're getting. Caliban Green, a lovely dark rich green there, and Wild Rider Red, a sort of orangey red colour that is going to be used for highlighting a lot of our red detail. Caliban Green, I really wish we had earlier on in the collection. We could have done so much more with it throughout the magazine's run. But as it is, we've got it now towards the end when we're getting nearer to the Astra Militarum section, as we'll be using this mainly for their armour as a base coat before highlighting with Auric Flesh. Right, let's head over the table and go through everything pretty much in one go to help catch up. But before we do, don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like this video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you're new around here. And of course, drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, and it goes a massive way to helping out this channel as well. I always want to know what you're up to in your hobby. And are you like me? Do you really think we could have had a few more paints a little earlier on in the collection, leaving more space for models? I think so, because a lot of the paint issues have been a little bit on the low value side. And finally then, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by Warbay.shop and Disc Games. One of the best online retailers about. They do second-hand and brand new models. They also have great savings, and of course it's that time of year again, so if you're looking for those little hobby gifts for your friends and family, check them out. They might just have what you're looking for. So as usual, there's a link for warbay.shop in the description down below, so check them out and you might find your next hobby project at a bit of a discount. Right then, let's head to the table and tackle issue 62. So here we are then with issue 62 for, well, our one and only time, as we're going to try and get everything done this single video so we can catch up and start doing the rest of our Gene Stealer Cults. So first off, we've got Caliban Green. This is probably one of the best greens. Look at it, lovely solid dark green, nice and bright, well, not very bright, but vibrant and dark. Really good. Choice of colour if you're going Dark Angels, so if you were painting up Dark Angels, you'd have had to wait a long time for your base troop colour. But yeah, I think by now I would have definitely gone out and bought my own if I was doing Dark Angels for the collection. But then again, we'd only have, what, 2 units? No, 1 unit really that would be done in Caliban Green, that's the Inferno Squad. But yeah, everything else would have been First Company Bone, which we had Wraith Bone at the very start of the collection, so we could at least paint it all then. Yeah, like I said at the start, we're going to be using this over Arcadians for their flak armour, and there's a few details in this and future guides where we'll put this into use as well. And other colour is Wild Rider Red, so a little more redder than Squig Orange, but still a lot more orangey than, say, our base coat of Mephiston Red. So yeah, this is going to look very stark contrast compared to how we've done the red on our helmets so far. So I'm going to be modifying the guide. So without further ado then, let's adjust the camera and dive right on in. Into issue 62 we go. So we have a bumper paint guide where we update all of our models, well, over a majority of the factions anyway. So bumper guide using our new paints. So read sections then, we've got Path to Ascension, our third page of the Genius Cults, our 8th look page of technology with heavy vehicles, and a fiction page of called Enmity of Hope, a nice double page short story. Then play articles, we've got 2 pages for the Leagues of Votan versus Space Marines and Tyranids. So we'll quickly go through the paint guide, then I'll bring my paint desk in and we'll do our one and only model. So, how to paint, highlighting your models. The following pages will take you through the process of adding highlights to your models. This will brighten up your models and help define their details. For convenience, we have divided these steps by faction, but don't feel that you have to update all your models at once. So for our Eldari, we're going to be edge highlighting all the chunkier armor panels, so helping define all of the details, picking out all the edges on our weapon platform here. Surprised we haven't done the gun yet as well, maybe in another future guide. Picking out the edging on the panels on the Wind Riders as well. We're picking out the robes on our Farseer as well as the fingers. Any red gemstones we picked out as well with Wild Rider Red. There's our finished Eldari up to this point. Again, they're getting closer and closer to the finish. We've still got the cannons to do, as well as all the black guns. Although it looks like we've done the seats there, Mechanica Standard Grey, but we still haven't done a lot of the guns and stuff, which is very odd. So, could be another sign that they've slipped up with their photos. Onto our Space Marines then, so we're highlighting our Space Marine helmets with Wild Rider Red. So this is the one thing I'm going to do different. As you can see, it's a rather stark contrast between the darkened red that we've got and the Wild Rider Red that's going on top. Really, I don't like that. It looks too garish, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to relayer as best I can with Mephiston Red, avoiding recesses, and then come in with a Wild Rider Red, and maybe even for a final highlight, a spot of Squig Orange. For our lenses, we're doing Wild Rider Red on the centre of the lenses. Again, you might want to revitalise the colour with Mephiston Red first, leaving the shade in the recesses. Picking out the sensors on our Teleport Homer with Wild Rider Red. Then we're highlighting the gems, the capes, and any cables with Wild Rider Red on our Space Marine Captain and Librarian. On our Chaplain, we've got his guns on his bike and his Crozius. We're picking out the little diamond patterns. Not the easiest thing to pick out, but yeah, if you take your time, have a really thin brush, you could get a pretty good finish. I probably won't do that. I really can't get on with that sort of fine detail, even if I do enjoy painting eyes and stuff, which is very odd. Then we got a tutorial all about how to paint lenses for green eyes. So for our Space Marine Sergeant, we got Caliban green going into the eyes, shading of Nuln Oil, highlight of Auric Flesh, and yeah, making sure we get a nice sort of central point of Auric Flesh. Adjusting the model so that you are comfortable when it comes to applying your paint. There's our finished Space Marine gallery so far. All in all, looking pretty good, and yeah, you can really see here that I think the helmet could definitely do a relayer first before we go into the edge highlighting. On to the rest of our collection then. So we're looking at Votan, Tyranids, and Genius Cult. So for our Leagues of Votan, we're highlighting red cables, the edges of the plasma blades, and any screens on our bikers. For our Tyranids, it's just the barb gaunts with Wild Rider Red, looking at the living cannons on their shoulders. And for our Genius Cults, we're going to highlight the cloak here on our Magus. Keeping the Tyranids, we're coming back in with Wraithbone yet again, and we're highlighting this time all of the soft fleshy areas. And yeah, I don't like that. It's too much Wraithbone. Maybe seeing as you've shaded down the Squig Orange, relayer with Squig Orange, or at least reshade once you've highlighted, just so it's not so much of the same colour being highlighted and blending in together. Yeah, all in all, still, it's adding finishing touches to our models. And there we have our Tyranids painted up to this stage. We've still got a few colours left. yellow, and the tips of the cannons here will probably be picked out with white scar when we get that. And there we go, our mages is looking good, a lot more complete compared to last time. Yeah, all in all, we're getting closer to completed models. Right then, like I said, we'll bring our paint desk in and we'll tackle our Space Marine Sergeant's helmet. Right then, our first Sergeant is ready, and our first stage is we're going to relayer that helmet with some Mephiston Red. So we can pick out the flat of the helm very easily, using the side of our brush going right out to the edges, down over the back of the helmet. Then using the tip of our brush, we'll go from the corner and drag the paint out over the rounded surfaces, leaving the agrax there in the recesses. So there we go. Our helmet has been relayered. You can see the agrax sitting in the recesses there. So we're ready to move to our next colour then. So bringing out our brand new Wild Rider Red. So we'll get this prepared on our palette and give it a good shake first. And as usual, let's crack the paint on camera. Ooh, lovely. Look at that, nice orangey red. That'll be used for our highlights. So making sure we're not too overpowered, we'll come in with our brush again, using the side of it, and we'll trace along the edge of that vent. I'll pick out the brow here, the nose, and there we go. We can see that the highlighting is a lot more subtle than it would have been if we'd left it as the darker red. Yeah, definitely looks a lot better. We're not done yet. We've got one last little detail to do. We're going to use our second brand new paint, so Caliban green. Give it a quick shake and a crack. There we go, lovely green. I really do love Caliban green as a nice dark green. I much prefer, I think, if we had this as the Orc's base skin colour. And then we could have done the Orc flesh over the top. So paint thinned and a nice tip on our brush. We're going to go in, I'm going to get the lenses on our Sergeant helm. Looking a lot more complete. We'll let that dry and we'll come in with a quick shade of Nuln Oil. So with our eye lenses shaded, we're going to come in with a tiny bit of Nuln Oil. Get a little bit on the tip of our brush. And just apply it into the recesses of the eye. And then our final colour then is Orc Flesh. And using your thinnest tip brush, in my case the starter brush, we're going to get the centre of the eye with the Orc Flesh. And leaving that darker shade in the recesses there. I think the right eye has come out a little better than the left. There we go. I haven't got very good focusing on this zoomed out mode, but I will put some quality pics up at the end for you guys to check it out. But there we go, a little bit better Sergeant helm than the magazine guide. Speaking of the magazine, let's get back to it and we'll do some reading. So here we are then, back to our magazine. We go past our paint guides, and here we are at our first page of lore, Path to Ascension. Once a Genestealer patriarch has established a cult on a host world, it will take many generations for its dark purpose to come to fruition. During this time, cultists will prepare for the day of Ascension, when their alien gods will finally reveal themselves and descend upon their world. Yeah, to devour it. This is why cults are a bad thing. Genestealer cultists unleash their fury on the Howling Griffin's Space Marines. So yeah, classic Space Marine chapter, and a pretty cool piece of artwork here, depicting near enough an entire company of Howling Griffins facing off against a near endless horde of Genestealer cultists, just showing how much a Genestealer cult can put sway over a world. Although every cult is different, its beliefs and practices informed by the world on which it's formed. Each will pass through similar stages of development. Initially, the cult will operate in secret, as the patriarch infects the population and spreads its influence. As the cult grows, it will work to establish a power base that it can use to prepare for the arrival of the cult's alien gods. Later, as a hive fleet draws near, the patriarch will lead the cult in violent revolution, destabilizing imperial rule and leaving the planet vulnerable to Tyranid invasion. The approach of the Tyranids also triggers dormant genes within the cult's population, giving rise to specialized bioforms designed specifically for war. These may be psychic abominations or warrior organisms with crushing pincers, sinuous whips, or scything blades for limbs. Such hybrids are utterly alien in appearance, and their presence would have put the cult at risk during the earlier stages of its development. As such, the birth of these creatures is seen as a great blessing by the cult, for it is a sign that ascension draws near. Specialized bioforms such as the psychic Benefactus are born in the years leading up to a hive fleet's arrival, adding their might to the cult. Yeah, I think probably one of my favorite of the recent models. Love the big Xenos brain there, taking over the majority of the model. He's got a pure Tyranid arm there, a tail underneath his robe. Yeah, you definitely wouldn't have this guy as an advisor to the royal family that you're trying to overthrow, would you? You'd definitely give the game away. Infection and infiltration. In the early stages of a cult, operatives seek to undermine their host society through stealth and subterfuge, leaving it vulnerable to later attack. The cult will endeavor to place agents into imperial institutions, through which they will be able to exert influence over society or simply gather information. Bureaucratic offices, financial organizations, military forces, and the political establishment are all targets. The first to infiltrate these organizations are usually human, those individuals infected by the patriarch and brought under his will. Insurrection. After generations of preparation, the cult will begin a concerted campaign against imperial rule. Genestealer cults specialize in guerrilla warfare, where their lack of numbers and heavy armaments are compensated for. Key installations are leveled by hidden explosives, communication networks are silenced, and deafened troops are caught in ambushes and devastating hit-and-run attacks. The brood mind allows cult forces to coordinate these efforts with uncanny precision, forcing the foe to fight on multiple fronts. As the enemy prepares its defenses, it may find itself betrayed by key personnel whose true loyalties lie with the cult. Invasion. The day that has been foretold arrives, and the long-awaited Star Children descend. Destabilized from within by the cult's activities, the world lies vulnerable to invasion by the warrior organisms of the Hive Fleet. Whether or not the cult's insurrection has succeeded in wresting control of the planet is immaterial. For the Tyranids have come only to consume. As the hive mind reasserts itself over the patriarch, the brood mind that bound the cultists is severed. Freed of alien influence, they realize with horror the true nature of what they have unleashed. But it is too late. They, like everything else on their world, are nothing more than biomass, food for uncaring alien monstrosities. So there we go, kids. Don't do cults. Drugs are a lot better. Actually, no, don't do drugs. Warhammer's a lot better. But yeah, there we go. That's pretty much the effects of a cult, going from the early stages to the uprising to the inevitable end of cycles. Moving on then, we're taking a look at technology again as we look at heavy vehicles. Mighty war machines advance across no man's land, conveyed by steel tracks, grav engines, or other more esoteric means of propulsion. Their powerful weapons blasting all asunder. Armoured vehicles of the Imperial Guard crush all before them. So you see the many different types of vehicles, the various different patterns of Baneblade, the Rogel Dawn, the various different patterns of Leman Russ, and yeah, many other tanks besides. Every species in the galaxy make use of armoured vehicles and battle tanks to make war. The exact nature and designs of these vehicles will vary depending upon the technology employed by each civilization and its preferred methods of waging war. Some are lumbering behemoths protected by thick slab-like armour, while others are graceful skimmers that use advanced hollow fields to keep them from harm. However, all share a common purpose: to bring devastating weaponry to bear upon the enemy. Rogel Dawn Battle Tank. The Rogel Dawn is a mobile bastion that is used by the Astra Minotaur armies to anchor their battle lines or to spearhead armour assaults. Small arms fire rattles ineffectually against its armoured hull as it advances across the battlefield, while its own formidable weaponry blows apart enemy vehicles and fortifications, or shreds swathes of infantry like chaff. So yeah, the Rogel Dawn, the slightly bigger, halfway between a Baneblade and a Leman Russ version of the Imperial Guard tank. Named after the greatest Primarch of all, Rogel Dawn, the latest tank in the Imperial Guard armory to be unleashed. Pretty cool. It's basically, as I said, halfway between a Leman Russ and a Baneblade, so it's more of a battle tank. Got sponsons, hull-mounted weaponry, including Gatling cannons, autocannons, battle cannons, multi-melters and melter guns, plus pintle stubbers. We're getting one of these with a collection, so we'll be adding it to our Astra Minotaur force, although I will be adding mine to my Krieg force rather than my magazine collection. So yeah, going to be having a nice sort of snow camo scheme to mine in the end, and maybe adding some Krieg guys popping at the top. Chaos Predators. With the ability to be fitted with a variety of armaments, the Predator is a versatile tank that can be used as anti-personnel or vehicle hunting roles. It is often employed to support the infantry assaults the Space Marines are famed for. Long years of service to the Dark Gods have corrupted many Predators, and demonic entities inhabit the hulls of some of the tanks, directing them with malign intelligence and enhancing their resilience with supernatural power. So you see an Iron Warriors Predator with twin las cannons, smoke launchers, as well as sponson-mounted single las cannons. Really cool. Classic Predator tank design is awesome. Just made even more spiky by adding, well, spikes to make it look very chaosy. The more modern Space Marine equivalents are the grav tanks of Belisarius Cawl. The largest of them is the Repulsor. The Repulsor is a new innovation that has only recently seen action in battlefields of the 41st millennium. Created by Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Cawl, this mighty battle tank has been deployed in the Indomitus Crusade in great numbers, where it provides devastating fire support for the Space Marines. Unlike conventional tanks, it is held aloft by powerful gravitic arrays, allowing it to glide over even the roughest terrain with ease. Finally, let's take a look at some of the Xenos tanks in the form of the Eldari Fire Prisms. Equipped with advanced gravic technology, the Fire Prism is a highly mobile fire support platform. Its primary armament is the dreaded Prism Cannon, a powerful laser cannon that can melt through the hulls of even the most heavily armoured tanks. Fire Prisms provide vital support to the Craft World's armies, blasting apart enemy vehicles and fortifications that the light infantry that forms the bulk of their force would struggle to deal with. Yeah, the Fire Prism, this is the updated version of the tank. The older one had a much chunkier sort of turret with a heavy metal gem This one, though, has clear plastic gem, a clear plastic sort of housing area, and a much more sleeker top canopy. And yeah, definitely wouldn't mind getting one of these to add to my Eldari. Still uses the classic Wave Serpent Falcon basis though, just has a newer frame for the turret and add some extra plates added on as well. Right then, before we hit our play articles, we have a short story and it's a bit of a long one. So we have a double pager to read. Enmity of Hope. A metallic clang reverberated throughout the narrow chamber, followed by a slow, protracted hiss as the pressure in the boarding umbilical equalized with that of the vessel on the other side of the hatch. The ship's sensors indicate the life support systems are still operating over there, so we should have atmosphere, reported Nihilus. But given what I've heard about these things, you probably don't want to breathe the air. It could be contaminated. Standard quarantine procedures apply. Devon checked the pressure seals on his suit as she said this. He'd heard about the various contaminants found aboard shipwrecks, and didn't fancy a case of the Gellerpox. So you mean something could be alive over there, Chief? Sensor augers have not detected any signs of life, she said. Then added, but be alert. The Enmity of Hope, mused Devon. Cheerful name. I've heard about space hawks. You see those things are haunted. Who knows what Emperor-forsaken creatures infest that thing? Uttered Tolkard, the salvaged team mechanic. Yeah? Well, I've heard about riches that can be found aboard one of those things, replied Erickson. Salvage, Archaeotech, even STC files. There was this old sailor on Cyrus Station who... Okay, cut the comms chatter, ordered Nihilus. Let's just get in and out before anyone else notices it's here. As soon as word gets out, everybody will want a piece of it, and I don't fancy being here when the Adeptus Mechanicus arrive. The light on the airlock flashed from red to green, and the hatch slid open slowly, with an unpleasant squeal of metal on metal. The other side of the hatch was illuminated only by the dim glow of emergency lighting, although many of the lumen strips flickered on and off were entirely dead. Stab lights built into the crew's helmets pierced the gloom and cast deep shadows where the probing beams fell. The floor sloped down to one side, and the bulkheads leaned at odd angles or bowed in the middle. Everything was bent and distorted, but this part of the vessel seemed largely intact. The crew stepped out onto the rusted decking, their footsteps echoing through the passageway. Baroque architecture and arched bulkheads confirmed that external scans had suggested that the derelict ship that formed this part of the hulk was an Imperial in design. Well, Devon thought, at least that should make finding our way around a little easier. Looks like an old cargo hauler, voxed Tolkard, the cruise mechanic, over the close comms net. Perhaps we'll be able to salvage the gravimetric stabilizer from this wreck. How's this acting up? A new water recycler would welcome me too, chimed in Devon. It'd be nice to drink something that doesn't taste like it's filtered through one of Erickson's old socks. Hey! Devon brushed aside the tangled mess of wires and cables that dangled from huge rents in the ceiling. As he moved further into the ship, his helmet lights swept back and forth across the room, causing the shadows to lengthen and withdraw with their movement. His fingers tightened around the grip of his close combat shotgun. As he advanced into the gloom, aside from their own footsteps, the only sound that could be heard was the rattling and clanking of pipes and the occasional creak of tortured metal. Are you sure this thing's stable? He voxed. Sure as we can be, came Nihilus's less than reassuring response. Come on. The crew made their way through the twisted passageways of the Enmity of Hope. Broken machinery, fallen ceiling panels, and other detritus littered the area and impeded their progress. Layers of rust and grime coated everything. Oily stains ran down the walls. In places, a thick slime had eaten away at consoles. Something crunched beneath Devon's boot, and he looked down. He'd trodden on some kind of organic growth. The thick black ichor oozed from its shattered shell. There were more of them throughout the wreck, their serrated forms curving up from the decking or protruding from bulkheads. Devon shuddered. He scraped his boot on the deck plate. He tried to avoid getting too close to any of the others. Beneath his suit, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He had a strange feeling that they were being watched. Jumping at shadows, he chastised himself. Anyone would think that you were new to this. They passed the docking bays, plasma generatoriums, and crew quarters, but none of them contained anything of value. After some time, they came upon an access hatch choked with debris. Devon heaved a smashed console aside and tried the airlock behind it, but it wouldn't budge. Tolkard joined him, and together they tried to turn the lock wheel, but it was stuck. "Stand aside," said Ericsson, unshouldering a battered las cutter. The powerfully built man handled the bulk equipment with ease. Bracing himself, he flicked the activation switch and pulled the trigger. The edge device sputtered and then whined into life, an incandescent beam lancing out of its focusing lens and searing onto the hatch. Sparks flared from the door's surface, and globules of molten metal fell sizzling to the deck as the laser bore its way into the thick metal. Ericsson took a step back. After a few minutes, he had cut through the seal. With a kick from Devon, the severed door toppled, landing with a heavy clang. They stepped through the breach into the cavernous space, careful to avoid the still glowing edges of the hatch. Thick spores swirled through the air, disturbed by the changing air currents. They fluttered and danced in the beams of their helmet lights. Tolkard studied her auspex. Suddenly, a blip appeared and tracked across the static haze screen before blinking at a couple of seconds later. She gave the size of her device 2 perfunctory slaps, performing the rite of percussive maintenance she'd been taught, but the signal did not reappear. "I'm getting sensor ghosts," she voxed. "For a moment, it looked as though something was moving in here." "Are you sure we're alone?" asked Devon, doing his best to steady his voice. "It's just a false reading," Tolkard replied. "This hulk's playing havoc with my sensors." But behind the firmer glass window of her helm, she looked less confident, he thought. The end of the wide cavern was buckled. Chunks of rock were fused to the deck plates and walls. Metal spars jutted from the far end of the room. They looked less like they had pierced the ship and more like they somehow passed cleanly through the hull. Tolkard scanned the wreckage, her auspex beeped and whistled wildly. "It looks like 2 ships have fused together here. Must have phased right through one another in the warp." She stepped through the opening. As she did so, she twisted and stumbled. Her body spun through the air as though falling upwards. There was a sickening thud as she struck metal. "Tolkard!" yelled Devon. There was no answer over the Vox network. Nylas carefully peered into the room. Twin pools of light projected from her helm illuminated Tolkard lying on what, from Nylas's perspective, appeared to be the ceiling. Her limbs were splayed out at awkward angles and her neck bent sharply to one side. She wasn't moving. "Looks like some sort of gravity realignment," she reported. "Must be caused by the artificial gravity of the other ship." "Climbing ropes," she ordered, detaching a grappling hook from her backpack. Devon watched the rest of the team clumsily abseil down, or rather up, into the hold, and stepped over the threshold. He felt his stomach turn as gravity suddenly reorientated, and he found himself upended. He swallowed and began descending the rope after his crewmates. When he reached the bottom, he saw the others crouched over the body of Tolkard. "She's dead," proclaimed Ericsson quietly, his eyes downcast. From then on, the team progressed in silence. Devon carried the mechanic's auspex. Although his knowledge of the device was limited, he'd never possessed Tolkard's affinity for machine spirits. Devon glanced at his chronometer. Only a couple of hours had passed since they'd entered the hulk, but it felt like much longer. Suddenly, a beeping noise came from Tolkard's auspex. Some kind of motion sensor. The screen displayed a moving blip like before, but now it was much closer, almost on top of them. Devon caught sight of movement in his peripheral vision. He turned and saw a darkness moving within the shadows of the branching pipes above. There was an insectile quality to its movements as it skittered over them. For a moment he lost sight of it. Then it darted towards Nihilus at the rear of the party. Before she could turn and aim her las pistol, 2 of its 6 limbs darted out towards her. She screamed as its taloned hands dug into her shoulders and hauled her off her feet. She managed to loose the shot from her pistol before it was knocked out of her grip, but the las bolt merely flashed harmlessly against the creature's chitinous hide. Devon swung his shotgun up and tensed his finger on the trigger, but all he could see was a pair of kicking legs in the darkness, and he dared not shoot for fear of catching Nihilus in the blast. Then Nihilus was gone, lost in the labyrinth of pipework. For an agonizingly long moment, her screams continued to come across the Vox network before being replaced by static. For a time, no one said anything. It was Ericsson who broke the silence. "Throne, what in the 7 hells was that thing?" Devon racked the slide of his shotgun and swept it across the room, searching for a target. "I don't know, but I need to get out of here." He turned to head back the way they came. Devon saw a blur of limbs move amid the forest of pipework and pulled the trigger. The blast resounded through the chamber. Sparks flashed where shot struck metal. He fired again and again into the darkness, but there was no sign of his target. He advanced cautiously, weapon raised. Steam geysered from ruptured pipes. He was breathing heavily now. An icy chill ran down his spine. Whatever this thing was, it was hunting them. The pipes around him cracked and clanked. Suddenly, he heard a wet tearing sound accompanied by a scream. Devon turned and saw Ericsson collapse to the floor, clutching a ragged stump at his elbow. Blood spurted through his fingers, covering Devon's void suit. The creature was behind Ericsson. It was hideous to behold. The body was covered in a thick dark blue carapace, and it had 6 limbs, 2 of which ended in large claws that were covered in blood. It stared right at him with a predatory gaze. Devon tried to shoot it, but he was out of rounds. He tried to reload, but fumbled the mechanism. The creature advanced towards him, its gaze unwavering. His fingers trembled, and the shotgun fell from his grip and hit the deck with a clatter. He tried to wipe blood from the visor of his helmet, but only succeeded in smearing it around. Half blind, he ran. Ericsson's screams followed him. He switched off his Vox receiver, but muffled screams still found their way through his helm. Or perhaps he only imagined they did. Blood pounded in Devon's ears as he raced his way back down the corridor, almost drowning out the sound of his boots on the decking. Sweat bathed his skin, and the weight of the void suit dragged at his limbs. Where once it had felt like protective cocoon, now it felt like a casket. He stumbled, his feet made clumsy by his heavy boots, and his fear. Momentum carried him forward. A few more steps, but then he fell. He willed himself to get up, but fear had taken his legs, and they would not obey, like in some awful nightmare. Devon found himself in the grip of the creature's lower limbs. He writhed and struggled, but was unable to free himself from its iron grip. He trembled as his stomach was knotted with terror. It reached out a taloned claw and tore his helm free of his void suit. He tried to look away, but found he couldn't. As Devon gazed into the creature's eyes, his body relaxed and hung limply in its arms. His fear and revulsion slipped away. He saw the thing for what it truly was, and a smile spread across his face. It was beautiful. The creature's jaw distended, and something fleshy darted from its mouth. Devon didn't resist, for he knew now it was a friend. He felt its reassuring presence in his mind, its almost paternal love for him. He suddenly realized he had a purpose. He needed to take the creature away from here. With his new companion, he headed back to his ship. So there we have a rather gruesome and kind of disturbing story, really, where we see a gene stealer infecting the crew of Imperial ship, leaving the sole survivor to take it with them. Right, and let's quickly finish up. We have 2 pages to quickly look at for our Leagues of Votann. 2 pages for the campaign. So first off is Space Marines versus Votann in Sweeping Raid. So we see the Space Marines facing off against the Leagues of Votann here. We got our victories as usual. So again, kind of hard for these victories to really line up. That's what we have to do here. Okay, this doesn't specify enemies for a change. Okay. Just saying what the end of a Space Marines campaign would be like. Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. So no longer do we have to have a specific set enemy, it seems. Then we've got the same sort of thing here for the kin of the Votann. So yeah, pretty cool. Next up then, Tyranids versus Votann in Display of Might. And yeah, there we go. So we got, again, Tyranids facing off against the kin here. Yeah. So, yeah, we've definitely changed from what we had in the previous few issues where it was specifying specific enemies. So perhaps they've listened to feedback or something and changed it throughout the last few issues. All in all, still pretty cool. Right. Our next Combat Patrol issues are going to be 63, 5 Acolyte Hybrids. So we get Cult Operatives information, we get some new Battlefield Essential cards, which, as of filming this, we have had an email from Hachette concerning the incorrect cards we've received. So replacement cards will be coming in issue 68. It should be the issues that come with the Goliath Rock Grinder. Then we get a double issue, 64 and 65, includes 10 Neophyte Hybrids. So we have a continuation of Sergeant Askerton's story. We learn about the Warzone Calnath. And yeah, we get to build and paint our awesome new units, both issues, of course. I'm looking forward to getting I've actually got a second set coming because I made a complaint about the misprinted cards and they've sent me a replacement issue, but I'm not expecting it to have the correct cards in it. But regardless, these are the only things I actually need to buy to take the Combat Patrol to 1,000 points. And you'll see that towards the next 20 issue review. But yeah, it's safe to say this is going to be the easiest of the forces to take to 1,000 points for my particular lists anyway. But yeah, there we have it. That is our issue 62 done. We're up to date. Latest delivery, and well, actually our latest delivery I need to start, which is 63 onwards. So I'll be getting started on that hopefully sometime next week. But for now, I've got to go edit this down and hopefully get under 45 minutes. I may even see myself rereading the story, as I didn't quite like the fact that some of the voices I've done male voices and the characters turned out to be female. So yeah, sorry for this particular story. Really should have read it through first and then decided on voices for characters. But yeah, there we have it. We're up to date on our previous delivery at least. So I will see you all very soon as we get into issue 63 and the start of our cult troops. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time on Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.